everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have 3 thrifted dresses that all need a quick fix. Some of them are a little quicker than others, but I think they're all going to be pretty straightforward, and I'm going to take it from the easiest to the most involved. So the first one, I adore this dress. I have never owned a dress like this in my life. It's just so feminine and pretty. I just love it, and I got it at a consignment store for half of what it would have sold retail. I thought that was a pretty sweet score, but these straps are for some reason ridiculously long. And when I bought it, the young woman at the cash desk said, oh, somebody else was just trying this on and the straps were too long. And I was like, right, they're super long, but I can sew. It's going to be a quick fix. And she said, oh, if that other lady had been able to sew, she would have bought it. So you know what? There's an example of having just a few basic sewing skills really opens up the world of thrifting to you. So that's going to be a beauty and lightning fast. So let's get on that one right away. But let me show you the other 2 first so you know what you're getting into with this video. This one is more like a casual Saturday run to the grocery store kind of dress and cute combination of fabrics, but it's too short. Like, I do prefer a longer dress, but because it already has an interesting mix of fabrics, I wondered this tank top might give me some possibilities of adding some fabric to the bottom. So that's going to be the second one. And then third is this one, which is sort of a strange little dress. I think it's really pretty. The fabric is pretty, but it's 2 layers of 2 different prints. And they're both sheer, so it's 2 layers of sheer. So you'd still need to wear something under it, which doesn't really go with what I'm going for here, which is easy summer dresses that you can just throw on and go. I don't want to have to wear like a full-length slipper. So I have an idea of how to add a lining and extend the length all in one go. So adding a lining sounds like a problem, right? But I think I've got an easy way kind of sorted out in my head. And so I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So there we go. 3 dresses, 3 quick fixes. Let's get into it. I'm going to be fixing it from the back. It's a bit of a mess here anyway. Like, look at all these threads and look at that. Oh my goodness, it's already coming apart there. All right, so I have some fixing up to do, but the main thing is that the strap, I can see that is 1 inch that I've got on the fold. That's a total of 2 inches that I need the strap shortened by. If I wanted to just shorten 1 inch, then dead simple, that would be there. But 2 inches, that would look kind of funny. So with this opening here, the problem is kind of solving itself for me. Okay, let me show you what I mean. First of all, I just need to open up a bit here to get that strap out. Yuck. It's sewn in there pretty securely. Not nicely, it's all thready and yucky, but it's secure. Okay. And then I want it 2 inches shorter. So the top of the dress was here, really, so 2 inches from there puts me to here. That's where I want the top of the dress to come to. I think I'm actually safe to cut off this end now. Bit scary, but not too bad. This is why I'm glad this is open, because I'm going to take some off like this. Do you see what I mean? I'm going to take some off of that cut edge to bring this up to here. I think that makes sense, doesn't it? Yes. Okay. So it would be kind of like that, which I think will be fine. So it's quite a bit I'm taking off there. Eek. Okay. So then I just need to wrap that binding back around the edge of that ruffle and sew it back on the dress. This one is not disintegrating around the bias here, so I'll just have to open that up. Okay. And then that's the corner I cut off the other one, so I will cut them the same. And then I'll be sewing this bias closed again. So little finicky stuff here, but that's going to work great. Yay! Okay, navy thread into the machine, and this one's going to be done in a jiffy. Okay. I am not sure if I actually recorded or not, but the bias trim is sewn back on. It worked out just fine, and it looks good outside and inside. And now it's just a matter of reattaching it, hopefully neater than what they did. All these threads are so yucky. These are their threads, and I don't appreciate them. So now this strap comes around. Make sure I don't twist it. Okay, this goes in there. A little bit of a back tack to just hold it to that seam allowance. I've made sure I have not twisted the strap. I'm going to just tack this down to that seam allowance and then sew from the outside too. And then that seam allowance folds in, and then I'm just going to do a back tack across. There. More threads. And then I'll just do a back tack across the top there to keep that going in the proper direction. Okay, nicely cleaned up. There was just no need for all that big mess of threads they had. Yuck. That's what the back looks like now. It looks so much better. So easy and so much cleaner than it was. Excellent. That one is done. So for this one, it's not only too short, it's also just a bit too roomy and kind of unflattering and potato sack-ish. I'm just going to take it off and pop it back on inside out. That just always makes it so much easier to pin away the excess fabric. So you can see that it's quite roomy. So I'm going to take it in, especially at the waist, right there. And anytime you do that, you can't just put one pin. You have to pin a whole line of where you're going to be tapering in and out. I'm taking it right through the sleeve and off the end of the sleeve. And if I wasn't going right to the end, then I'd have to taper off really gradually into the side seam. And then I have to shimmy out of it while making sure I don't poke myself with a pin and making sure that I don't lose any of the pins. I'll deal with the width first before I go adding fabric to the length. Here's my line of pins of where I want to be taking it in, and I'm going to be sewing just from pin to pin. That'll work out fine. But I have a finished edge at the beginning and at the end. So when I get to the serger, I'll have to do my special little flip tricks at both ends. Okay, so I just want to check to make sure that my pins are equal. And then I'll just sew from pin to pin. So if I just fold in half and kind of feel through, yep, I think we're good. So because of that finished edge, I really do want to make sure I'm bringing my edges together to line them up perfectly evenly. There's no wiggle room, right? So I really just want to get those edges together, get that looking good. If it gets stuck at the beginning of a seam, just give it a little wiggle. I also can feel this seam. I want to make sure that seam is matching inside. So I can just kind of feel that through. I'm just using my universal needle and a regular straight stitch. I'm not worried about using a stretch stitch because of this being a vertical line. It's not going to really stretch too much along the vertical. So regular straight stitch is fine. And the universal needle usually works out fine. If I see any skipping of stitches or any problems at all, I'll switch to a jersey or ballpoint needle. Again, here at the end, I want to make sure those edges come together. So I'll take out that pin so I can kind of have a little bit of play and keeping these edges right together. And that universal needle did just fine, no problems. Okay, so I just tried it on inside out again and decided to take it in just a smidge more. And now I'll cut off the excess. So I'll cut just a finger width away from my final stitching line. Okay, and then off to the serger. When I'm starting to serge at a finished edge, I don't want a tail of thread. So I'm going to just serge a couple stitches. That'll do. And then lift my presser foot, bring that chain of thread around, snuggle it to the front, and then serge right over it. You can cut it off at any time. And then it's a different trick at the end. And of course, if you don't have a serger, you would just do the exact same thing, but zigzag your edges instead of serging. I don't like how the seam allowance is going up here. I should have made it stay down, so that'll look better. And then I might just have to add in a little back tack there to finish it. Now, when I'm coming off of a finished edge, and I've shown this trick before, but you want to go until your needles have just cleared the fabric. Now my needles are off the fabric. Lift up, bring it forward, flip it over, wiggle it back under the foot, and come back up the other way just for an inch or two. And then chain off. Good. And then I get a really nicely finished edge with no tail of thread sticking down. The tail of thread is up here and I can safely trim that there. That's fine. Okay, so now let's get to lengthening this dress. This is the bottom of that tank top. And the bottom of the dress, even though I took it in a substantial amount, it's still bigger than this. So I have a couple options, right? I do like how some of the colors in here are picked up in the embroidery on the dress. I think it's fun together. So what I'm thinking, because this is bigger, I can't really just, cut a strip and sew it to here. But if I can't, I'll cut 2 strips from this and make a ruffle. What I would kind of prefer, if I can, would be to make like shirt tails. But I'm like literally lacking just an inch in width on both sides. Unless I go sideways. I just turned the tank top sideways and I would have enough for a shirt tail here. Now with knits, normally you cannot go sideways because you need the stretch to go around instead of up and down. This bottom piece is going to have 0 stretch applied to it, really, right? So can I just do that? I think I want the shirt tail to hang down about 5 inches. It's still going to show my knees, which is not my favorite, but I think any longer it starts to look funny. I'm going to cut 2 6-inch strips. Nothing is quite as satisfying as a sharp rotary cutter. I'm folding them in half just to make sure that I'm symmetrical, not including that little hem that has to come off. My centers together. Well, that's just about perfect. Alrighty, back to the serger then. With the serger still in normal overlocking, I'll serge across the top edge of both pieces. And then pop out the left hand needle, and I'll take out that left hand thread as well. When you lift the presser foot, the tension comes off the thread and you can easily slide your thread right out. And switching to rolled hem, the blade goes down. This one pushes over to R and blade goes back up. Then I'll set my tensions to 4, 3, and 6. And my stitch length can go to 3.5. I'm going to bring my stitch length down, 2.5. And careful around curves. You don't want to curve it off before it reaches the needle. So there's my little shirt tails. I love it. Oh my gosh, I love my serger. Mwah. Okay, back to the cutting table. I'm going to line that serged edge up with the cover stitching on the dress. This is probably the only tricky part because I want to make sure it's lined up on this side, but I want to sew it from this side. Right, so I'm going to be doing all this flipping back and forth, making sure I'm lined up nice, and then pin from this side. Oh, and I think I want my pins pointing to my right, so that when the edge is on my right, I will be pulling out the pins in a less awkward way. So I'll do a couple pins on this side, and then I'll check in and see how I'm doing on the other side, right? And then kind of meet in the middle. This is called a cover seam, where it's 2 rows of stitching on top, and it looks like overlocking on the bottom. I'm going to lay that cover stitching on top of my serged edge. Sewing it this way, where it's coming out from under that hem, I'm hoping will make it look more like it was meant to be like that, rather than just sewing it right side together and creating a new seam here. I'm hoping that this way looks more intentional. Okay, and now it's off to the sewing machine. Okay, so with my edges here of my shirt tails just touching at the side seam, I'm going to sew on this lower edge of the cover seam. I'll go around once at the lower line so I know I'm catching it for sure. But then I'll go around a second time on the upper line just so the 2 lines of stitching look the same. Good. And then I'll hop up and go around on the upper line. Okay, so this one is done. So here's a little sneak peek of how it looks. I'll show you how it looks on at the end of the video. Cute though, right? So now the one that needs the lining and lengthening, and we're gonna solve both problems with one stone. It has two different prints. This is the one that I think is prettier. So I'll treat this one as if it's the lining. I've got them separated out as much as I can. I'm gonna bring side seam to side seam. There's a bust dart here. I think I'll avoid that. I'm gonna go in a shape like this with a right angle here and a right angle at the side seam. Okay, here we go. Right angle there, curve down, right angle there. You can just do a line straight across, no problem. But I think that line's gonna kind of show and shadow through, and I think a curve like that will look a bit more natural. Now this piece, I'm gonna be replacing most of this with lining, but I want to like extend this down. So here we go. I have this knit lining, which is going to be very easy care. I don't really want to use like a woven acetate lining because it doesn't wash very well. Even if I hand wash and hang to dry, it's going to be all wrinkly. So a very carefree lining like this is going to be perfect. I want to have the lining the same as this, and maybe stopping about 2 inches from the bottom, but then I'll put about 6 inches of this back onto the lining. So 2 inches from the bottom brings me to way over here. I need to get a way wider fold. So I'll cut a little bit higher just so I have a little bit of seam allowance. Good, okay. And then I'm gonna slide this up 2 inches. There's my line. Okay, easy peasy. I'm gonna be serging the two sides of this together. I'll change my serger to black. I'll serge the sides of that. I'll serge the top of this into the skirt, and then I shall serge the bottom 6 inches or so onto the lining. Just serging my two side seams of the lining in regular 4-thread overlock. So this is the curved top edge of the lining. Because it's so sheer, I think I'll put the seam to the inside. Normally, the seams of a lining would sort of face the outside of the garment, but because this is so sheer, I am going to make the seam face the inside of the garment. It is a shaped seam, and so I just want to make sure that it's sort of going in equally. Like, see that? That's not equal. I've got all this extra in one spot, so really I should be quarter marking this and, you know, pinning my 4 quarter points first. Okay, so I've got the top of the lining pinned all the way around. This is just the top couple inches that are left of the fabric where I cut it. So I'm just serging that around. Alrighty, so now there's my strip that I'm going to serge to the bottom of the lining, both seams facing in, basically right sides together. So I'll pin around here, serge around that, and then fanny's your aunt. Good, so that just extends the lining down. That's gonna be good. This is the seam at the top of the dress, that ruffly edge, and I just tried it on. It kind of sits funny, so what I think I'll do is I will just zigzag it down onto the lining just to really flatten that seam out. So I'm using a triple zigzag to go over that edge and make it lay flat. But it's making such a nice difference. Like, look how nice and flat that is now. Done like dinner. All 3 dresses are done, and I'm heading to Kelowna, BC this weekend, where they have beautiful vineyards. So I'm going to try to get some photos there wearing my 3 new dresses. So thank you so much for joining me today. It was great to have you along as always. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.